Margaret stood at the edge of her garden, hands deep in the pockets of her cardigan, watching the early morning light spill over the roses. At 71, she knew the truth about aging. No matter what magazines promised or what miracle creams claimed, the years only moved in one direction. But she also knew something else. While she couldn't rewind time, she could influence how gracefully she moved through it. That truth had come to her slowly, like the gradual silvering of her hair. Her husband's passing 5 years ago had been a jolt, a reminder of life's fragility. And when her doctor mentioned that her heart health and bone density were good for her age, she heard the unspoken part of the sentence. Good for now, but not guaranteed forever. Margaret had decided then to make changes, not in the hope of living forever, but in the hope of living well for as long as she could. Over time, those changes became 5 daily habits, each one a quiet rebellion against the decline she could not stop but could certainly slow. The first was movement. Not exercise in the punishing, sweat-dripping way she had attempted in her 50s when she joined a gym she secretly loathed, but movement she enjoyed. Each morning, she walked the winding path along the river that ran past her town. She greeted the same joggers, waved at the same fishermen, and noticed the subtle seasonal changes, the first buds on the willows, the sharp scent of autumn leaves, the frost tracing the grass. On rainy days, she turned on music in her living room and danced alone, barefoot on the carpet. It wasn't about burning calories. It was about reminding her joints and muscles they were still needed. The second was food. Not dieting, but feeding her body like she actually valued it. Gone were the heavy meals she once served at Sunday dinners, the creamy sauces and deep-fried indulgences she'd thought of as love on a plate. Now, her kitchen was stocked with colorful vegetables, fresh berries, whole grains, and olive oil. She didn't deprive herself. She still enjoyed a square of dark chocolate every evening. But she thought of each bite as a choice toward longevity rather than a surrender to impulse. Over time, the small aches in her knees lessened. Her energy steadied, and her digestion became more forgiving. The third was connection. After Arthur's death, there had been weeks when Margaret spoke to no one beyond the cashier at the market. She'd felt herself slipping into a quiet loneliness that seemed harmless but hollowed her from within. One winter afternoon, she'd accepted an invitation from her neighbor, Ruth, to join the town's community garden project. That single yes had drawn her back into the orbit of people. Laughter over planting mishaps, shared recipes, the warm gossip of who was seeing whom. She also called her children more often, not just to check on them, but to tell them about her own days. The human voice, she realized, was as vital as any vitamin. The fourth was learning. Margaret had always loved to read, but she began pushing herself toward unfamiliar subjects. Astronomy, the history of jazz, even basic coding lessons online. She treated her brain like a garden, planting seeds it could sprout into new connections. She could feel the difference. Her memory sharpened, her conversations became livelier, and she found herself more curious than she'd been in decades. In learning, she discovered a quiet thrill that kept her mind from shrinking into the same repetitive thoughts. The fifth, and perhaps the most difficult, was rest. Not just sleeping enough, though she made sure of that, but true rest, time without tasks, without the compulsion to be useful. Margaret had been raised to believe that sitting still was laziness, but now she claimed her moments of stillness like treasure. She would watch the shifting clouds, or sip tea without a book or phone, or simply breathe. The world did not collapse when she paused, and in those pauses, her body seemed to thank her. These 5 things didn't make her younger. They didn't erase the creases at her eyes or the occasional stiffness in her back, but they made her days fuller, her mind steadier, and her heart lighter. And they had a way of spilling into each other. The energy from movement made her more eager to connect with others. The clarity from good food made learning easier. The peace from rest made her more present in her walks. One bright spring morning, Margaret's granddaughter Lily came to visit. At 17, Lily was brimming with the restless urgency of youth, convinced that life's value was measured in grand adventures and visible achievements. They walked together through the garden, and Lily said, "Gran, you seem happier than anyone I know. What's your secret? Don't you ever wish you could be young again?" Margaret smiled. "Oh, I don't need to be young again. I just need to be well enough to enjoy being alive. That's the real secret. Lily tilted her head. But how? You're older than my teachers and you walk faster than they do. Margaret thought for a moment, then shared her 5 habits, not as commandments, but as an offering. She told Lily about her walks, her meals, the joy of having coffee with a friend, the excitement of learning something new, the deep relief of rest. Lily listened, half skeptical, half curious. A week later, Lily sent her a message. Went for a walk instead of scrolling my phone. It wasn't bad. Margaret chuckled, knowing small changes often grew roots if given time. Months passed, and Margaret's routines continued like the steady ticking of a well-kept clock. There were hard days. An old injury in her hip flared up, a friend in the gardening group passed away, and her youngest son lost his job. But she weathered them with a resilience she didn't remember having in her 40s. She realized it was because her body and mind were nourished. She wasn't running on fumes. One autumn afternoon at the community center, the town nurse gave a talk on aging well. She mentioned genetics, luck, and medical care, but also emphasized the power of consistent habits. Margaret sat in the back, listening with a small smile. She wasn't chasing immortality. She wasn't afraid of the future. She was simply tending to her life the way she tended to her roses: regular water, good soil, and protection from harsh winds. Later, walking home, she passed the river path she loved so much. The trees were just beginning to turn gold. She stepped onto the trail, her steps easy and steady. Somewhere, far off, a child laughed. The air was cool and sweet. She thought about how many more mornings she might have like this. No one could say for sure. But because of the 5 simple things she'd chosen, she knew she was giving herself the best chance for as many as possible. And that, she thought, was enough.